All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. Our topic today is forethought activities, and hopefully we'll have some things today that'll help you use these activities in your district. I'm going to talk about it from the teacher point of view and from the curriculum management point of view. So whichever is your job, you can take the rest of the information back to your district. I am Paige Parker, and I'm one of the professional learning coaches here at eduphoria, and I will be leading today's topic. And I did want to mention that we do have a Q&A window. You can post questions, and I will check into that window periodically and try to answer the questions if you have something about what we're talking about today. If you have questions about topics other than what we're talking about today, please email those to training@eduphoria.net, and one of our professional learning coaches will get in touch with you as soon as possible. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about the settings that you need to put into place when we're talking about activities, what control you have at the district level. We're going to talk about teacher-created activities and the publishing process. We'll talk about curriculum department created activities. So activities can be bottom up, so to speak, from the teacher sent up to the curriculum team for approval, or they can be top down from the curriculum team pushed down to teachers for access. And then we'll talk a little bit about managing those activity settings. So I'm going to go in as an administrator, and I'm going to go to Forethought. And when you're in as a Forethought administrator or a curriculum administrator, you can see the Forethought options over here. And when you go to Forethought options, you get 4 tabs. The second one in is the activities options tab. And this is where you would set up the defaults for your district. So there are 2 options for publishing, whether you want to require a curriculum administrator to approve that lesson before it gets published, or whether you want to automatically approve and publish those lessons. That decision is made district by district. Some districts want the curriculum administrator to approve them so that they're making sure that they're all following the same template, all following whatever other district standards might be there. But you have the option of making that decision. You can also show related activities, and then you have some publishing options here. I have it checked to default to publishing activities anonymously. So it will automatically, if you don't do anything else, if the teacher doesn't do anything else, it will be anonymous. And then I also have checked disable the ability for teachers to change the anonymous publishing method. This again is a district decision. Some districts will allow the teachers to put their name on that lesson if they want to, and some say no. If you were working for the district, it's really not your lesson, it's a district lesson. That's up to the district to decide. Some teachers don't want to put their name on it. They want to remain anonymous, and some teachers want the credit, and that's something that each district has to kind of decide how they want to handle it. But you would make those decisions here or implement those decisions here on the activity options tab. And then I would click my save button. And now the way that I'm handling activities requiring approval and staying anonymous are going to be saved for everything that we do going forward. Okay, so once we have our settings ready to go for activities, I'm going to go in as a teacher, and I'm going to go into my lesson planner, and I'm just going to go to today's lesson. Let's say I already taught this morning, and this lesson worked out really well, and I know that I'm going to want to use this lesson again in the future. If I click in my course box for this one lesson, you'll notice there are several tools that come up in my course box. One of them is a gear with a plus sign on it. And when I float my mouse over the gear, I get a tooltip that says, add this lesson to my activities. And that's what I want to do. I want to save it as an activity so that I can use it later, find it, in a variety of ways, and also possibly publish it if I think this is something that would help my fellow teachers. So I'm going to click on that icon, and I get a pop-up window that says this lesson has been added to your activities. If you don't get the pop-up window, it's not going to save. And If you don't get it, that means you have pop-up blockers turned on somewhere. That's not a function of Forethought. It might be in your browser that you have pop-ups blocked, or it might be in your operating system that you have pop-ups blocked. If you're not seeing the pop-up window when you try to save an activity and those activities are never saving, then talk to someone in your tech team on your campus or in your district to get this through the pop-up blockers. So I'm going to say, okay, I do want to do that. And it doesn't look like anything changed. But if I go over to the My Activities tab, most of the teachers spend most of their time on the My Planner tab. I'm going to go to the My Activities tab, and you'll see that I had a couple already, and now there's one called Activity for English Language Arts. And when I click on it, it's going to open that lesson plan that I just saved. It always names it Activity 4 and the course that you're in. It doesn't know what you want to name that activity. But what I usually do is if I have a title on the lesson, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to give it a name, and I want to give it a name that will kind of help me sort. So I'm going to say E6 for 6th grade English, and I'm going to put G for grammar, and then I'm going to paste in that title or give it a title that will kind of help me. There is no folder structure in your activities list, but if you name them with a naming convention, it will group them. So it'll put all of my 6th grade English lessons together, and then it'll put all the grammar ones together within that section. If I had, I have one here that says SS for short stories. So using some sort of naming convention like that will organize them in the list, but you can't put them in folders. So I'm going to save that, and I have to refresh or flip over to my planner and come back. It's sometimes faster, but now you'll see that that title has taken effect. It's there, and it's going to be associated with the top standard in the list. I can always double check by right-clicking and setting this as my primary standard. So once I've set that one as my primary standard, I know that's what it's going to be tied to. If I wanted to make another one the primary standard, I could do that. You'll notice it moves that up because that top one is going to be my primary standard, but I want it to be the one that I had before. So I'm going to set 610D as my primary standard, make sure it's at the top. That's what it's going to be associated with, and I'm going to click my Save button. Now, right now, without doing anything else, I can use this activity in my planner. It's going to be saved in a way that I can find it. So I can always go back and find this lesson by using my navigation over here in my calendar, finding the lesson, and then I could send that lesson to a new date to move it around within my planner that way. I am not a person who thinks in terms of dates. I think in terms of concepts. So the activities make more sense to me. I can say, I'll just pick a week from now. Let's say I wanted to teach that lesson. I can come into the course, go to my standards. I'm going to find 610D because that was the primary standard that I associated it with. Scroll, scroll, scroll. There it is. When I click on standard 610D, down in the bottom resources section, I'm going to see two activities actually that are associated with this standard, but the one that we just added in is this one that says review tongue twisters. And when I double click on it, I get a button up here at the top that says use in plans, and all I have to do is click that button and bring it in. It brings in the standards, it brings in the lesson. Now, it already had my template there, and Forethought will never replace anything that's in your planner because I had clicked on the date, it stamped it with the template. So all I need to do is delete that blank template, and I'm ready to go. Any attachments that I had will also come in with that lesson. The standards, everything is going to be part of that lesson when I bring it in. So I can find it, if I've saved it as an activity, I can find it based on the standard that it's associated with by looking in my resources. You'll notice that in resources right now, it says it's my activity, which means I created it. And right now, I'm the only one who can see it because I haven't published it yet. but I can always use my activities. I can use it as a sorting system for myself, a way for me to keep track of my lessons and then find them based on the standard that they're associated with in my resources down here. But if this is a good lesson and I think others would benefit from it, or if my appraiser is doing a walkthrough when I'm teaching this lesson and says, hey, I'd like for you to share that with other teachers, that was great, then I can come back to that activity. So I went back to my activities tab. I'm going to click back on the activity that I created and named, and here's everything that I brought in earlier. And now I can click on this button that says Publish Activity to District Tree. So I'm going to click on that, and it says it will be published as soon as it's approved. And I'm going to click OK. This activity now has a different icon. Instead of the pencil, which means I can still edit and work on it, I can actually still edit it right now. But what it's telling me is that I'm in the process of getting published. So I have two arrows going in a circle telling me that it's in the process of being published. It has to be approved by somebody, which is what that little pop-up window told me. But I can see that my activity is now part of that publishing process. And it has the same icon that you see on the Publish button up here. I'll still access it the same way, but once the publishing process is completed, other teachers on my campus or in my district can also access it that way by going to the planner, going to the standards, and finding it in the resources tab down here. From that point, I'm going to go over and be the administrator again. So in my list as an administrator, I have a button over here that says Approve Activities. And when I go in and look, I will see any courses that have activities to be approved. And there is that 6th grade English lesson that we were just talking about that I just published that says Review Tongue Twisters. As an administrator, I can see who the teacher was, even though I have it set to publish anonymously. As the approver, I get to see who did the publishing. I can also make any changes that I want to. If I wanted to add additional standards, if I think they left out a standard, I could come over to the list of standards and I can double click and add an additional standard in there. That one really doesn't belong, so I'm going to remove it. But I do, as the approver, have the ability to do that. I can also go in and make any edits to the text. You can see I have a flashing cursor. I could change anything that I wanted to. So as part of the approval process, I can tweak it if I need to. I have a couple of options up here. I can publish, return, or delete. If I don't think it's appropriate or meets our standards at all, I can click the delete button. Or sometimes you'll get some that were published accidentally and they need to be cleaned up, and that's what the delete button is good for. Or I could return it, and I could say, when I click on return, I could type a little message in here saying, this lesson needs, and I could list the things that need to be added. Please add and resubmit, and then submit that it'll go back to them with that message. Or I could say, I do want to publish it, and I could just say thanks for sharing. Or I could put in whatever other information I want and then click the submit button. And you'll notice that moved it out of the pending activities, and it made it a lesson that's now available to any teacher that teaches 6th grade English and clicks on 610D. They will see that lesson in there. You can also see activities on the scope and sequence if they have been added in, and that's where we're going to go to add in those activities from the top down. So I'm going to go to the administrative account again, and I'm going to go to scope and sequence. I'll go to middle school, English language arts. Let's go back to 6th grade, and I'm going to go into 610D. So now I can see those activities that have been added into that standard. Here's the one that we were just looking at that just got published. As an administrator, I can still see who the author was. So those activities are going to show up there. The ones that came from the teachers up, once they've been published, they'll show up in the scope and sequence. But I can also add in additional items here. So if I wanted to put a lesson plan out there as an exemplar lesson, then I would just go to the standard that I want to add something for. Maybe this is one that we've struggled with, teachers have struggled with, and I want to give them some examples. So I'm going to right click on that standard. And when I right click on it, I have two choices. I can add an activity or I can add a standard clarification. And they have two different icons to try to help the teachers know what the difference is. An activity is what we have just been working with. It's a lesson plan structure. So I'm going to say I want to do an activity, so it will have the same icon as any activities that teachers create. These are all our lessons. It's going to open up in what looks a lot like the lesson planner. The difference is there's no date. So lesson plans have a date and not a title. Activities have a title and not a date, because you can use them on any date that you want. But I would want to put a title in here, and I would want to use whatever naming convention that we're using. Maybe this one's going to be short stories, and no, this is going to be writing. So I'm going to just create my activity here the same way I would create a lesson. If you're using a template for your teachers to write their lesson plans, I would want to follow that same template. So I might want to copy that template from where it lives on the Forethought Options tab, copy that template and paste it in here for my activity so that it's following that same structure. It's going to automatically bring in the one standard that I'm attaching it to. But again, if I want to add in additional standards, I can go over there and just double click on them like you would with when you're in the lesson planner, and it'll bring those in. I can type my lesson plan here. I can add attachments. This part looks slightly different than it does on the lesson planner. It's in a separate little box down at the bottom, but you still have your paper clip so that you can add your attachments in there just like you would in a lesson plan. So you can put all of those elements in and then save that activity. And when I save it with a name, let me do a quick refresh. When I click on the correct standard, it's going to show there. The activity will be there, and then for the teachers, it will be there on that bottom right-hand corner. Depending on who is creating the activity and what level, because you can give delegates the right to create activities, they may or may not have to publish that activity. Okay, last couple things that I wanted to mention in terms of managing these activities. You can, as an administrator, go in and remove an activity. So I could go into my 6th grade again, and I could delete an activity out of there. Your end users cannot delete an activity once it has been published. I could come here and delete that activity. So I could delete it at the administrative level, even though the teacher that created it cannot delete it in their lesson planner. And once that teacher leaves, because it has been published, it stays with the district. It stays here in the curriculum until somebody with that administrative role goes in and deletes that. I hope that this was informative. I hope that you found something that you could use. I do want to mention that we have resources out there. So you can go to our online help section. I've put 2 links in here if you want to write those down real quickly, but I'll also show you that you can go in. I'm going to click on one of these links. And when you are in our Forethought section, you will find under the Forethought for All Teachers, there's the link that went to create and share activities. It has a webinar. We did a whole webinar about activities, which is more in depth than what we did today. And then it has some directions here for what you would want to do as you're working with those activities. We also have an article that is under the Forethought for Curriculum Management section, and it is called Using Activities to Build Your Curriculum. And it walks through what I showed you, how to get through and do your settings, and then also how to create an activity on the Scope and Sequence tab that would be available for all teachers teaching that course. So those 2 articles are out there for you to remind you of what we talked about today and help out, hopefully. And then I want to thank you for your time today and say have a great week. I hope everybody's doing better than we were all doing at this time last week. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us.